Assalamu alaikum. Today's tutorial is going to be about Excel, but more about Visual Basic for Applications or VBA for Excel rather than Excel itself. A lot of requests have come to me that I should be doing some tutorial on how to create macros. Now, creating macros is not as easy as it sounds because I would have to actually teach Visual Basic to people before we can get into macro creation. And of course, you can find much better tutorials than these small 5 to 8 minute videos that normally I do. But my way of learning Visual Basic through Excel is going to be much more quicker in case you want to continue. So how I normally actually let people understand Visual Basic for applications is that they actually record macros rather than creating some Visual Basic programming themselves. They can record macros, and based on the recording of the macros, they can then look at the code which automatically gets populated by Excel and then learn things from there. So the good advantage of this is that it gives you instantaneous results, that you will be able to actually see the fruit of your labor very quickly. But the bad thing is that you don't really understand each and everything that Excel is doing, and that's probably fine if you want to limit yourself to Excel's Visual Basic for application programming. But if you want to become a full-blown Visual Basic application developer, then maybe that's not the right path for you, and this tutorial will not be useful for you. So this is only for those who want to get quick and dirty macro creation done in Excel. This will be a series of tutorials in which I'm going to take you through it. This will be the first part in which, but these are going to be independent parts anyway. In this first part, we are going to see how to record some basic macros and how to do a little bit of modification on them for our future needs as well, without changing a lot of coding or doing a lot of manual Visual Basic, but with some learning of Visual Basic as well. Okay, let's go to Excel now and see how this works.
In Excel, the first thing you have to do to enable to record macros is enable the developer toolbar. By default, this is the toolbar that you will get. To enable this, go to File, then Options, go to Customize ribbon, and here you will see that the developer toolbar is by default disabled. This is because most of the people don't actually need to be developers of macros, so that's why it's disabled, but for this tutorial we have to enable it. Now once you enable it, you will have this new developer menu option available, in which actually you can access Visual Basic, macros, or recording the macro option. So let's start the process. For the first macro, again I'm going to do very small commands just to get an idea that what happens or what code automatically gets populated when I'm doing something else in Excel. So click the record macro. It will ask you for a macro name. For example, I will leave it as macro 1. Of course, if you're going to record a real macro, give it a proper or more intelligent name that you will remember what this macro is going to do. And this macro is going to be stored within this workbook. Okay. For example, in this macro, now the recording has already started. You can stop this recording by either the button on the top which says stop recording or the stop button at the bottom. Now for example, I go to column F and row number 5. So I click this. So that's the first thing I have done till now. I've clicked cell F5, and in this cell I'm going to type skills. So I have done 2 commands, and now I'm going to stop the recording. And now I'm going to go to Visual Basic. In Visual Basic, this is the interface you will see. Go to modules. If you expand modules, your Visual Basic commands will be stored within these modules. So double click it and you will see actually your macro 1. So sub macro 1. So actually any function that you record or macro that you record is called a subroutine or a sub function of the main Excel, and the name that comes in front is the name of the macro or the function. And of course, in every programming language, anything that starts need to end as well, so there is an end sub at the bottom. So there can be multiple macros within this module 1, and they can be all here with different sub names. Now let's go inside it. Anything with a single quote, starting with a single quote, is actually a quote or a comment. So this has no impact on programming. If I delete it, if I don't delete it, it has no impact. It can be made to actually help someone understand what the code is about. Since I did not write any description while recording the macro, so that's why it has no much detail that what does this macro do. Now as you remember, this is now the actual first command. This which I have highlighted in red is the first actual command that I did or recorded while recording this macro. Range in the brackets F5 dot select. So this gives you an idea that if you want to go to a particular cell and select it, because that was the first thing I did, I clicked or selected a cell. That's how the command comes out. Range in the bracket, it can be the range or cell name, and then dot select. The next thing it did was in the active cell, because now this has become the selected or active cell. Active cell dot formula R1C1. So it is going to type a formula or value in that cell, and for my case it was not a formula, it was just text which was called skills. So within the quotes, skills is written. Then as you remember that I only gave 2 commands, but there is also a third value here which says range F6 dot select, because when I typed the skills word, I pressed enter and the selection automatically went to the next row, which was cell F6. So it recorded that as well, that first type here and then go here. So it's very understandable code that what is happening here. So tomorrow if I want to modify this macro, let's say I'm going to select, I'm going to say in range A1 dot select, that select the cell A1, and then in that cell write hello world. And if I delete this third command, what it will do is it will change the value of cell A1 to hello world, but after that it will not go to the next cell, it will remain within the cell. Let me go back to my book 1, and now to run a macro I can actually click this macros, and it will show me all the macros within all the open workbooks. So currently I have only one workbook open with one macro, so which is called macro 1. So if I click run, as you can see, it selected cell A1, typed hello world in it, and remained on this cell as well. So in this way actually I can start to have some understanding of how the VBA programming is working and how I can customize it as well. Let me take another example now. I'm going to record another macro. It's going to be called record macro 2. I selected cell F5, and this time I'm going to change its formatting to yellow highlight. Okay, then I'm going to stop my macro, go to developer toolbar again and stop recording. Now let's see what the code has happened. You can access Visual Basic from here, or you can right click on your sheet and see view code, and it will go to the code of that sheet from where you can access module 1 as well. It's your choice how you want to access it. And now as I told you that within one module it can be multiple subroutines or subfunctions as well. So sub macro 2 has started, and in that one the first command was range F5 dot select. So it selected the range, and with the selection dot interior, so something is going to happen to the interior formatting of the selection. Whenever you see a dot, it means that it is a sub child or of this command of with. So it's the total command can be read as selection dot interior, that the interior of the selection dot pattern is equal to Excel solid. So it was a solid pattern that we are going to do. Dot pattern color index is automatic. The color number is 65535, which is yellow color. Tint and shade, we are not changing the tint of it, so it's default 0, and pattern tint is 0 as well. And width, so this selection has finished. So you don't need to memorize all of these things. Again, what you need to understand is that changing a pattern to yellow color, this was the most important thing, that it changed the interior color to 65535. And tomorrow, if you want to do this to any other cell or multiple cells, then what you can customize, I'm again not going to say that you memorize the color codes or patterns. Just record a macro for the pattern you need and then preserve that code for any other function in the future as well. Okay, let's go again. Let's take a third example now. Let me save this file, or this will be in our macro, that if we want to save a file through the macro, then I'm going to record a macro. This will be now called macro 3. Okay, file, save as. So I'm going to save it to my desktop and call this file my macros. So it's going to give an error. If you try to save a file with macros as XLSX, then it will give an error that XLSX is actually by default a macro free file type. So it will give an error that your VB project will be, or macros will be, not preserved with the file. So if you want to continue preserving without the macros, then click yes. Otherwise, I will click no, and I need to change my type to XLSM. This is Excel macro enabled workbook. So I will now save it as XLSM, and now my file has been saved. And now let me stop the recording. Let's see what the code has become now. For macro 3, it is the first thing it did was change the default directory to my desktop. Then the more important command is here, which is active workbook dot save as file name. So this is the file name it is using. File format is Excel macro enabled book. Create backup false. Again, you don't have to memorize each and everything. The main thing that you can customize is this path, that where are you going to save your file. Okay, so in future, again, with your macro you are creating multiple files, this command can be used to save the file. The objective of actually showing you these 3 samples is that in the end, if you are going to do some macro things, you don't have to memorize the commands. You just can record them, modify or tinker their source code a little bit, and then that will become your main macro. So to complete this tutorial at this stage, for example, I'm going to combine all of these commands into one macro file. So for that, what I'm going to do is, let me delete the comments. So this macro is going to be called macro 1. So first I want the A1 cell to be selected. It will say hello world. I'll delete all of this. Now my range A1 is already selected, so I don't need this. I want its pattern to be changed to yellow color. I don't need this as a separate macro. So now all of it is combined in one macro, and within it I actually don't need to change the directory as well, because my full directory path is already given here as well. So this is just an unnecessary command, and the active workbook file will be saved as my macro.xlsm. The change I'm going to do is I'm going to call it my macros updated.xlsm. So let's see how this macro works now. Let me delete everything from here. Let me remove any color formatting. So I have nothing in this right now, and the file is currently called my macros. But when I go to developer macros, you can click the macros button here or use the shortcut key Alt F8 to get to the macros. So I'm seeing only one macro because I deleted all the other two macros and merged them into one macro. Now if I run it, you can see it changed first text to hello world, change this cell to yellow, and save the file as my macros updated.xlsm without asking me to click anything at all. So this is normally how macros work. Of course, my objective of this tutorial was never to teach you anything really productive, but just to give you an hint that how to actually go and start creating your own macros and how to step into understanding how the Visual Basic code works. You have to do minimum modification. You don't have to memorize each and everything. That's why learning Visual Basic for applications in Excel is the easiest thing you can do as compared to learning Visual Basic by itself. So that's how you learn to make macros. In future tutorial, I will give you some good examples as well and go into a little bit of real coding as well on how to create loops and make some useful macros as well. So if you have any particular request of a macro that you want to see, you can post that request as well. But in any case, in the next tutorial, I will be showing you some useful macros by myself, as well as teach you some additional commands of Visual Basic itself on how to create loops and run repetitive commands that you are unable to record by default. Thank you for joining today. If you have any questions, please do leave in the comment. Thank you.